there's just a big difference between Starbucks, right? So what is Starbucks? What kind of products do they offer? Well, they offer a lot of products. They offer bags of coffee that you can buy. They also offer like fresh coffee drinks. They also offer, kind customer service. They also offer a place for you to sit and work and chat. So you have to you break down all of their product offerings and you think, okay, well, a company like Starbucks is actually this very multi-dimensional sort of company with all of these different product offerings, and software is integrated into their business. And very, 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 very small amount of their products are actually software products. So they do have an iPhone app that is a software product.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
So that's like one customer-facing thing that they do that is software. And I think you could even take a product that itself is software, and you can break it down and you can say, what exactly are we automating here?
So why don't you tell the viewers watching, keeping in mind they're generally entrepreneurs, what they're going to be able to get from watching this 60-minute interview, what they're going to be able to do that they can't do now, and how they're going to be able to look at their businesses in a way that they aren't looking at them now, maybe.
Yeah, certainly. So what you would be able to get is an understanding of how software works in pretty much any business. And that's in a early stage business or a late stage kind of a business, like a big business. And it's the skills of understanding what, if you're going to go down the route of building software, I'm going to teach you the skills of what kind of software you should pursue, what sort of a path you should pursue, and the reasons that you should pursue it. So that goes into a little bit of understanding the scientific method and how that can be applied in your business. So you're really using software to test hypotheses, and you're using software to build automation for your business. And that's the real question is, you have to first define who your customer is, right? And then we can talk a little bit about that. But once you have an understanding of who your customer is, what your problem you're trying to solve for them, then the software piece kind of falls in place, right? Versus saying like, the first thing that we do is we make software and then, we solve the customer thing later. Right? So it doesn't work that way. And that's in like any kind of business, right? So I think the value that I offer is giving you an ability to understand that distinction. And when you're starting to go down very unproductive paths, and I've certainly seen that quite a lot in my career. So I've been building, making software since 2011. I started with my first mobile apps for skiers and snowboarders and skateboarders. And that actually taught me a really valuable lesson. So one of my apps, Skate Dice, actually got featured on ESPN a while ago. Wow. And we had like a bunch of pro people doing stuff. And that was actually a really cool experience, but it really taught me a lot about what it means to get a product out into the market, and what it means to find paying customers for a product, to get people to find you, right? So there's a lot of things that it was a little bit of luck at the time, because I came upon the idea kind of right at a time when smartphones were coming out. And I also happened to, it's always the case, usually the best kinds of businesses that you can think about building are ones where there's something that you're doing that's something that you're like uniquely interested in. Okay. And so you have this like very, this like set of skills that kind of like layer on top of each other. So at the time I was just starting, I had a pretty good understanding of programming because I did a little bit of it in college. And I had been like a snowboard bum for probably I spent most of my 20s just like as a snowboard bum. And so I was like up there in the mountains. I was up in like Breckenridge. I was in New Zealand on the South Island. And I was basically like living out of a hostel and like snowboarding every day. Okay. Awesome. It's like, that was my 20s. Right. And so, but what was so funny so I brought my laptop with me, and I was like a freelance writer at the time. And I was like, like writing little articles. I made like a little bit of a side income. Amazingly, I never actually held a job. I just kind of like did that. And then this idea for this app kind of came into my mind. because I was sitting on the chairlift with some friends. We're in the gondola, and there was this really popular game that people were playing back in the winter, or back in the States. In this, it was a lot of skateboarders were doing it. Snowboarders were also doing it. People had these physical dice in their hands, and they would like roll the dice, and then they would, and it would have tricks on them. Okay.
Right.
So I was looking
I see. Okay.
So me and my friend are looking at this, and we're thinking, okay, well, this is interesting, right? Because, this is fun. First of all, it's really fun. But then, you're sitting there, you're freezing. You got your gloves on. It's the gondola, and like, what are you going to do? Throw some dice like on the floor of the gondola with like everybody's boot grease on it? It's like it's a cool idea, but the setting where it's used doesn't make any sense, right?
Right. So just to clarify, the dice would give you the tricks that you would be doing as you went down the slope the next time, and you would do them in the sequence so that they were rolled in, I assume.
Well, so that's kind of another thing too that that me and my team noticed, right? So by team, I just mean like a bunch of other snowboard bum friends.
Yeah.
So, like nothing fancy, right? It's just a bunch of like people, right? So anyway, so you could roll like, you could roll one trick, right? And then so usually what happens is you and your friends are standing at the top of the jump line. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna roll like one trick. Okay, and then we're all gonna do that trick, and it's gonna be something stupid. It's gonna be something that like nobody is comfortable with, right? So like everybody, the cool thing about that is it was something that would challenge you to do something different, something kind of outside of your norm. So it's like, oh, I don't usually spin this way. All right, like I'm really good at 360s, but I kind of suck at like 180s, right? So for some people. Now, other people, if I get this trick, then I'm like, oh, I love this trick. That's my jam, and I'll do well. But it would always kind of push your boundaries. But this was right around the time that smartphones were kind of coming into the mainstream. So it was like a confluence of things, right? So you had this game that people were already playing, and then you had smartphones coming into the mainstream right around that time. So more and more people were having smartphones right around 2011. It was around the time of the iPhone 4, okay? And so the idea popped into my head at the time, was like, well, this would be great if I had this on my phone, right? And so then I just set out and prototyped it. And the reason I think this is a particularly great example of when it's a good time to go into software, or when it's a good time to make a software product, is if you think about it, there's a certain kind of validation that already existed for something like that. So automatically, the great thing about that kind of app was, here's a thing where people were already doing that thing. It's just that they weren't doing it in the digital world. They were doing it in the physical world. And it was very popular. People were already doing this thing. So I'm not actually being all that inventive when I go and, make this product, right? All I'm doing is I'm saying, let's just take this thing that people already like. We know they like it, and let's make it available on their phone. And what we'll do is we'll take the unique, we'll add in, or we'll mix in kind of the unique things that the phone and that software can do that physical dice can't do, right? So physical dice kind of there's just stuff it can't do, right? I can't say roll like 3 tricks. I can't have difficulty settings on dice. I mean, maybe you could, but you're carrying around like
you're carrying a big bag of dice at this point. Yeah, so gotta go down the mountain.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, I don't want to have to. Okay, I'll go and I'll find my like medium trick dice
exactly
for the rails, right?
Right, like, and the software could do all of this in a pocket-sized format. And so that's interesting. That brings up an interesting point. You're not bringing a demand to the marketplace, you're channeling a demand that already exists, and you're just taking that more efficiently onto the software platform, right? So you're not creating something that people aren't already doing. You're just taking something that people are doing. They're just doing it not as efficiently as they could be right now, and you're moving that into that more efficient area, right?
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to stumble on an idea where there's a little bit of luck, there's a little bit of not luck. A weird thing about it is you kind of have to you kind of have, I always feel like to be like a pretty good entrepreneur, you kind of have to be a little weird,
For
right?
sure.
You
Yeah,
have to be a little bit out there on a frontier. So,
absolutely.
first of all, like, I am a little bit weird to begin with. And especially when it came to the skate dice and snow dice apps, because like, here I am, like, there's not that many like programmer type people that are also like hitting like the big jumps, over in like Breckenridge and like trying flips and spins. Like that there's like a Venn diagram, if that's like a Venn diagram, those two do not overlap that much.
Not very often.
Right.
No,
Like not very often.
yeah.
So
Right. You got
you
a
don't
purple
get a
cow
lot of,
situation there. Yeah.
yeah. So this is like one of those things where if you have this skill and this skill, and it just may be that you're that one weird person that has like the total overlap of those skills. And that overlap can be a very, very unique phenomenon.
Right.
And that overlap actually is the thing that makes you completely immune to competition,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like, how many people out there have the depth of understanding of programming and then also have the depth of understanding of snowboard tricks?
Yeah.
Couldn't think of that. There were maybe, some people might have one, but they might have the other.
Yep.
But usually that exact combination of those two things was not very common. And that's kind of how I was able to, well, me and my team were able to,
You're friends of snowboarding bums. Right. Right.
my snowboarding bum
By
friends.
the way, weren't programmers because they were only in the one category of the Venn diagram. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how would,
exactly.
okay, and before we get into the programming, I just want to ask you this really quickly. How would somebody that's looking at their skills, their selves, their unique abilities, how are they going to know where that specific spot in the Venn diagram is, where they're not in one category, only in one category, they're not in the other category, they're in a very unique spot where they're taking both things into account in a way that
Mhm.
most people haven't found that alignment within themselves, and then carve out a way in the marketplace where they don't have any competition anymore. How does one do that?
Yeah, right. So I think the really difficult part is like this is not, there's a little bit of like serendipity in some of this, right? So this,
Right.
I feel like the kind of conversation that we're venturing on is it's a little bit of a discussion of the nature of luck
Oh
and
man, fascinating.
the
Right.
nature of like
Oof.
there's different kinds of luck, right? So and usually we have, by the way, I'm paraphrasing another interview that I heard, but this is like very much in my head, right? So there's different kinds of luck. There's kind of like, there's blind luck, and blind luck is a sort of luck where, gosh, like anything could happen to us. I suppose, you could win the lottery, right? That's maybe a little bit like blind luck. You could have some big inheritance, or some other great thing could just happen to you off the street. Now, blind luck is something that you obviously can't really prepare for, because it's just going to happen. There's really nothing that you can do. So that's one option. There's also like what you might call just like the luck of hard working, right? So
The harder I work, the luckier I get. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's totally true, right? So if you like, it's just going to be true that if you spent your entire life like just like never working and just like, I don't know, laying in bed all day, you're going to be introduced to exactly zero people, right? Like, and zero opportunities. Like that's kind of like true, versus like if you work really hard all the time, like the number of people and opportunities that you're going to be introduced to is going to be far, far greater than zero, right?
Yep, yep.
And then most of us are kind of in the middle there, right? Where we're not, we're like working a reasonable amount, and so there's opportunities that are going to naturally arise just due to the people that we know and the things that we do, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like hustle luck, or like the luck of hard working. The harder I work, the luckier I get, right? So that's one kind of luck. But then I think there's another kind of luck that is not given really enough attention, which is this idea that I create a kind of a brand for myself, or I get known for being the kind of person that does a certain kind of thing, or
Right.
that lives in a certain kind of a space. And in the process of doing that, the sorts of opportunities that are typically afforded to that kind of person or to somebody who has that knowledge, they kind of start to come to me because I'm seen as the expert in that particular domain. So a good example might be kind of like some of the stuff I was talking about earlier today. I right now, because I'm working on a 2D like pixel art game, I happen to know a lot about how to draw pixel art in games. And the more that I accumulate this knowledge, the more that I can talk about it online. I can write a bunch of articles. I can create a bunch of blog posts. I can sort of position myself as the de facto expert in this particular domain of pixel art or whatever. And what's going to happen is if somebody really, really needs this in their game, or they have this problem, in all likelihood, they're going to know me as that kind of person. And they might come to me and offer some kind of work in that very narrow specialty. And in that circumstance, they might be willing to give me a really, really great pay rate for it because there just isn't anybody that really knows that thing to that level of depth. So it is kind of like building a character or a brand and then advertising that in some kind of a way. And then when these opportunities happen, they're much more likely to kind of be channeled in your direction than they would otherwise. So
right. So in that way, you're actually manufacturing your own luck in that way. And
you are kind of, yeah.
I gotcha. And there's also the other point of view where it's like, I've read a study, if you look at yourself as somebody who is lucky, more things that are fortuitous will happen to you because you look at yourself like that. So you're more open to lucky things happening to you. Whereas people who look at themselves as unlucky people that say, oh, that's just my luck, they expect bad things to happen to them. And so they're looking for the bad things, and the good things are passing them right by, the lucky things, but because they look at themselves as not lucky, they're kind of blocking themselves off from that luck. What we're talking about is some universal spooky truths, and there's no limit to the mysteriousness of that. So, okay, go ahead.
I guess I was going to kind of get a little bit on, because I feel like I touched on the luck thing, but I also didn't kind of touch on the, how do you find a direction to go that's going to be really specialized, right?
Yeah, so, that center in the Venn diagram, right?
So it's really just it's kind of it's sort of who you are. You're going to go and you're going to do stuff that you're sort of naturally interested in. And for me, it was like I was this 20-something. I saw people doing the cool snowboarding stuff, and I wanted to see what that was all about. Like I wanted to be that guy, like going off of the jump and just doing the really cool stuff. So that's like how I got very, very, very into it. And so I was just practicing and doing all of those tricks and going off the jumps all day. It was just something that I was very interested in. So it's not what I'm trying to get at is like positioning yourself on the Venn diagram, being a little bit weird is really just the result of pursuing your own interests to a level of depth or to a point where you're actually able to push a little bit onto the frontier of what's possible or what's known. So if
leveraging what the market has already proven that they want, not in trying to force something that the market, like you guys, you will love this. You're taking something that they already want. They've proven that they want it, and you're giving them a more efficient way to do it through your unique pairing of your Venn diagram. And so what you want to do is look at what the market wants, what you can offer, and what people will actually pay for. In the center of that Venn diagram, the 3 circles will create that special spot for you where you can carve out your place and really create your own luck.
That's what this is. So when I look at entrepreneurship, it's not really about money. I mean, money, I think will come from it naturally because you're creating products. You're creating products, especially software. Software is special in the respect that it has this quality of having zero marginal cost of replication, which means that to make one more of a unit doesn't really cost any more than, so, if I make like a bag of coffee, well, I got to grow the beans. I got like it's not easy to make a second bag of coffee,
No kidding.
but
Gotcha. Yeah, but software is
with software,
click a button and you've got two of them already. And you make it one time, you create it one time, and you can really get that out to the marketplace and permeate it through without very much effort after the initial investment that you put to build it. Right.
yeah, exactly. So things kind of go into maintenance mode where like all you're doing is just like maybe one day a year, you're like answering an email from Apple where they're like, if you don't update your app, we're going to take it down. And like, okay, all right, I'll do a little bit of maintenance. But for, aside from that, like people just come to you and they buy your thing, and there really isn't much more that you do outside of that. And it's like holding a stock, really. It's like holding an investment. It just kind of pays dividends every month.
Right. Once it's built, once you put that upfront investment into it. Yeah. So it's kind of like the way I look at that is kind of like climbing up a hill, an initial hill. And as soon as you get to the top, the software is done. Then it's just free flowing all the way down now. It's going back to the snowboarding metaphor, actually, because you're taking the gondola up, but you're not taking the gondola. If you're building the software yourself, then you're climbing up that damn mountain. But once you're at the top, then you can just free throw your way down, and it's nice and smooth sailing from there. Incredible. Okay, so like let's bring it back to the software for entrepreneurs. How does an entrepreneur know when they need a programmer? How do they know when it's time to build a software? Right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's a great question. So and I feel like it's one that people get so wrong so often.
Yes.
Nice. So the thing, if you don't remember anything from this talk, the thing to remember is software is automation.
Right.
That's all it is. Software is just automation. It's just repeating a process that is established over and over again. So if you think about it, if you define software that way, then software is actually not the core thing of your business, because your business is some problem that you're solving for some customer, right? So let's go back to the snowboarding skate dice problem, or like that product, right? So how do we frame a product like that in terms of a problem and a solution? Well, people have a problem. They go and they skateboard, or they go and they snowboard, and they do a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. Their mind just keeps kind of suggesting the same thing over and over again, because that's kind of the way the brain works. You get stuck in a routine. Okay. So the problem that product solves is it helps you to break out of your routine. It makes it so that you just try different stuff. You break out of your routine, you expand your horizons. It's like a little nudge. So it solves that problem of getting stuck in the same routine. You could also say that it solves the problem of entertainment, right? So some people just want kind of novelty, or just want to have a new experience. And this delivers on that sort of natural desire to have a new experience. So that's the problem that it solves. Who does it solve the problem for? That's your customer, right? Well, you have to really very clearly define that. My products, they skate dice solves that problem for skateboarders. Snow dice solves that problem for snowboarders. Ski dice solves that problem for skiers, right? And it's those customer segments, right? So let's just think about this, right? Let's think about it first from the perspective of, we've got a problem that the product solves, and then we've got a customer, right? Now, can you solve that problem without software? Is it possible to solve that problem without software? Well, yes, because we talked about having the physical dice earlier, right? That's one way of solving that problem without software. There's a bunch of other ways you could solve that problem without software. You could have like a piece of paper, and you could have your friend choose a trick or something like that. That's like, one way of solving. So what I'm trying to get people to see is that you can validate whether you have whether your problem is worth solving and whether you have a customer. You can do all of that stuff without building any software at all. It's only once you've established that you have a problem that's worth solving, and you have a customer who is willing to pay to get that problem solved, that then you can think about some more efficient ways to automate the solving of that problem.
Right.
right?
I think last time we spoke, you gave me an example of a big company that did that, that they weren't starting with the software. They proved that the market needed it. They were doing it manually to begin with.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what was the example you gave me?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. The name of the company is Zappos. So you've
right,
probably heard of
yes,
them
yes.
before. And
Mm,
they're a big online shoe retailer, right? So
yeah.
what they do is they put shoes in front of people and they buy them. And so when they first started out, they didn't have any software. Can you believe it? A software startup that didn't have any software. What did they do? They actually just they just like put up ads. I think they just put up ads like online for shoes or whatever, and then somebody would like send them an email, right? And so they get all this. So they started to get like a mailing list of people that wanted these shoes. Okay,
Huge
so they
lesson
got
there. Yeah, they
so they
found the
got
buyers.
orders. They
Yes, yes,
found the
yes. Go on, my
buyers.
friend. Go on. Yeah,
People
yeah.
wanted the shoes, and then guess what they did? Because they didn't have any software, they went to the store and they bought the shoes,
Yes.
and they filled the orders when they got the shoes. Okay, so now what's great about this is like once they had established that there's clearly like people want this thing, right? So
Mm.
they've got their like little is like a small website like place where people can place orders, they get their emails. They didn't have a like a back end anything to like fill the orders at all, right? And they're running around, they're probably thinking, gosh, it's pretty tiring to have to go to the store all the time. Like, wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, well, first they're thinking, man, actually, my product is selling. I wasn't sure that it was going to, and that's why I didn't even have the product in yet to sell. And once
Right.
they've tested it, they've proved it that the market wants it. They've proved that they've got an efficient enough way to sell it. Now they
Right.
go back and actually fulfill on the orders that they. I mean, there's a huge lesson there. A lot of people will
Oh,
spend years,
100%.
years and years building a product that they don't know that the market even wants. For example.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was growing up, I was about 11 years old, and my dad invented something for a hockey bag that it would, because I was a hockey player growing up, right? So my dad would, he invented a fan that you didn't have to take out your hockey equipment and have to dry it out every day because that was a huge time waster. Otherwise, your
Yeah,
equipment would
sure.
get all kind of gross. And with snowboarding, like your boots, you'd have to air out your boots afterwards, right?
Oh, that's a whole business right there.
Exactly, exactly. And so he invented a fan that you'd put in the bag and it would dry out everything for you without having to without having to take it all out. And what he found
Yeah.
after 2 or 3 years of building the molds and designing it and really nailing an A+ product, he found out that the people that he was selling it to didn't even want that problem solved because it was part of the whole ritual of playing hockey and then coming home and hanging all your stuff up. And the fathers that he was planning on selling it to didn't even care about the whole bacteria thing and whatever, because when they were growing up, they did all the same things themselves. So no matter how good the product was, no matter how good the solution was, it didn't matter, man, because the people didn't actually want to buy the good solution. And so there's a huge lesson. Look at Zappos, man. They made sure that the market wanted it, that they had something worth selling, and that they could sell it. And then they figured out a way to build the software around fulfilling those orders. And so there's a huge lesson there, man. No kidding. Right.
Yeah, and just think about how much better you feel in building that business when you're like, I got the pipeline. It's just that this part of it's not efficient.
Yeah.
Versus like, I don't know if anybody even wants this. And so I like, this whole business of starting businesses can put you in a pretty bad mental place. And I think you have to be really careful about that. And one of the ways they can do that is when you spend like 5 years building a product that nobody wants, right? And not having, a dialogue with customers and with the outside world, because, that it feels hopeless, right? Versus saying, you know what, I'm going to find something that I'm going to like test first if people want it. I'm going to run a lot of little experiments on a lot of little things. And then the one that hits, I'm going to go with that. And so, I think of there's another guy, he recently, because I'm in the independent game space now, or that's kind of something that I'm into now. That's what I'm doing. There's a guy from Poland. His name is Jakub Wasilewski. He made this like really interesting kind of like space strategy game. Okay. And it did really well this summer. But his prototyping process is the most interesting thing, because when he first got into this, what he did was he made a lot of little like little demos. like mini demos, like self-contained demos of different games. So he'll make this one, and then he'll put out in front of the public. He'll make this one, put that out in front of the public. He made about 3 or 4 of these. But this one that he made, this one called Slipways, that was the most popular. That was like a hit. That thing just kind of had a life of its own. And then he was like, you know what? This is my most popular thing. Clearly, this is the thing that people want. I'm just going to make a bigger, better, awesome graphics. I'm going to go to some investors. I'm going to see if some people will invest in it.
And that's another thing. Now he can get money because he's proven that people actually want it. And so it's so much easier to raise capital. And then, like you said, there's the whole mindset of it too, where you're not building something, always wondering, oh, is this even going to sell? Or will this only be seen by me? Am I wasting my time right now? You test it, bring it to market first. And that's probably a big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make with their businesses, is building the software out, spending thousands of dollars on programmers and all of this time, maybe even trying to learn programming themselves before they've tested the concept of making sure that the market wants that solution that they're offering.
Oh, 100%.
They're offering it too. Yeah. Right.
It's having worked with entrepreneurs in various kind of like consulting situations, I've certainly noticed this kind of a tendency over and over and over again. I would say that it's probably there's a great website, you can link to it in this video. It's called failery.com.
Okay.
What it is it's a collection of stories of startups that failed.
Oh, it sounds like a great thing to be showing people that are looking to build confidence.
Yeah.
Come on, that sounds terrible.
I don't.
Oh, now I'm going to fail like they did.
not necessarily though, but I think it's like very important, because obviously you have to be sort of like, you have to be rationally optimistic, but at the same time, a lot of people do fail. And so wouldn't it be great to like learn from their experiences?
Yes, learn why they failed, right?
And so what's interesting about this site is it gives you a good way to kind of balance out what is risky and what's not. Because you see, the most common mistake on that site. Can you guess what the most common entrepreneur mistake is? If you just look at, collected stories of failed startups,
building it, proving the
market.
Man, that's gotta be it. They built it without testing to see what the market wanted. They built it because they felt like, oh, I would want this, so everybody else is going to want it. And it turns out maybe they do want it, but they're not willing to spend money on it, or maybe they don't want it at all. And you're the only one that wants it. There's not enough market demand for it. Yeah.
I want to say something like 60% of the failures were that.
Wow.
Or like some version of that. And then I want to say like another one was like, bad team dynamics or something like that. And so,
and even that, I bet you the team dynamics would have been better if they had a product that they knew the market was going to want.
Yeah. So you're right. You're getting into like, what fancy science people call like confounding variables, right? So you think that it's the team dynamics, but really the team dynamics could have been caused by just the fundamental thing that like you're making something that people don't want, or you haven't proven that people actually want it.
Yes.
So I sort of share your intuition there on that. I think that's likely what's actually going on is just most of these are, we made it, we didn't put it in front of people, and it failed. So I don't bring that up to be negative. I bring it up to say there are common themes, and if you can, it's actually a very positive thing, because if you can avoid, or at least like be very wary of that very common risk that you're going to make something without testing the market, then you'll know to avoid that, and that will increase your chance of success much more than if you hadn't tried to absorb that lesson.
For sure. Okay. And taking it back, you said that the role of software in business is, first of all, automation, right?
Yeah.
I'm also curious, what else do you think that the role of software plays in a business, a small or medium to large size business, maybe somebody who started it within the last 5 years? How do they know when it's time to start building that software? And what role do you think, generally speaking, would that software play?
So there's a few questions there. Automation ultimately comes down to leverage, really. If you really think about it, software is this new form of leverage that is more widely available than has ever existed. Leverage just meaning, an ability to multiply your efforts or to magnify your efforts. So if you think about software can open you up to not just the leverage that you get from the software itself or the automation itself, not having to have human beings do stuff as much, which that's kind of a separate discussion right there. But software can also open you up to the leverage that you would gain from network effects. So the kind of canonical example of that is Facebook, right? So Facebook is this network effect based business where the more and more people that you have on that platform, the more and more that platform becomes more valuable. And it also starts to push against the competition, because now the competition has to have as many people on that platform as you do in order to even be anywhere competitive. And that's kind of how Facebook kind of rose up to occupy this very dominant position, where they have pretty much no competition. Because if you think about it, like how could somebody get the same amount of users? The value increases with the users. So it can open you up to having network effects for your business. That's really something that's very unique to software, I would say. So that's one thing in particular. But also software, allows you to put your work in front of the entire world. Really, it's the language of the web. It's the language of sharing.
Yeah.
And so if you're very good at making software, then you're more able to reach an audience that's much, much wider and broad than you would if you didn't know anything about making software. So those are the additional benefits, aside from just what I would call, the leverage of automation, right? So now, the other question you asked was, what is when do you know that you need software, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually, I like to think of things like when I'm kind of internally screaming in pain. That is kind of like I like to wait for the pain before knowing that I need the software. And so if you're testing out your business and you've got customers and they're paying, and but you've just got this annoying, repetitive task that it's like every Monday I've got to sit down and let's look at the Zappos business, right? Okay, they probably didn't like having to run to the store all the time, and that was probably taking up a bunch of their time and their schedule. And I'm sure that they were feeling a lot of pain from doing that over and over again. And so at some point, they probably were like, let's build the software, please.
Yeah, get me out of this pain, man. Scratch that itch. Yeah, right.
And really, if you think about it, that's how software first started to rise into prominence. You think about the insane popularity of Microsoft Windows, right? So that became so popular because there are all these businesses. My mom has these stories about it, of how her job as an accountant changed dramatically through the years, right? Because at the very start, when she started accounting, it was like people were literally writing down in a physical ledger the accounts, and we bought this piece of equipment from this company, and so that's a debit. And we got this payment from this company. Oh, that's a credit. And we write it in the book. And they have these huge tables that they had to use, and physical tables that were rolled out paper on a table, and you're going and you're resolving all the budgets. So think about how much a spreadsheet, just this thing that we're so used to using, a spreadsheet program, think about how much more that makes something like accounting approachable. How much does that automate out of that process? It's there's all kinds of things you don't even need anymore. You think about, an answering machine, just an answering machine, and how that basically gets rid of the need for secretaries, right? It's we used to have secretaries, that was a thing. People had that job, and they would just sit at a chair and they would answer the phone. And that's what they did, right? So, and we built these things that replace the need to have someone sit in a chair and answer the phone.
Okay, so
right?
what are we looking for in our businesses? I mean, like we're looking for repetitive tasks, things that can be
Right.
replicated, canned and cloned, things that like, okay, so you tell me, like, what are we looking for in our businesses? How do we know when we need software for it? Aside from the pain, so you notice yourself being really ached every time you have to do something.
Right.
How do you know
Right.
when it's possible to automate that with software?
Yeah, it's well, you're right, because software is not every process is like that, right? So
Right.
I think you're always, until we invent like artificial intelligence or something, which, I don't know, maybe it's like right around the horizon or something, but some processes are naturally kind of digital. They're kind of naturally something that can be easily represented by numbers or by a string of text or that kind of a thing. Some processes are naturally digital and some are kind of analog. Some are always gonna will probably always require a human being in order to execute them. And so I think it's really just sort of like stepping back and kind of like trying to notice what sort of a process this is. I think saying, oh, I'm going to replace customer service or customer support with automation. That's kind of worked, but it also kind of like really hasn't, because a lot of
Yeah.
times it just like makes people mad,
Well,
you
no
know.
kidding. Like you're on the phone with the bank and it's like, press one for this. And it's like, 10 minutes later, I'm
It's
still
like,
not getting any
yeah,
help or solutions to my problems. Yeah. So you got to be careful trying to automate things that aren't necessarily meant to be automated. Okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So that's certainly a lesson. But
Yeah.
another thing too is this may what I'm about to say may venture like a little bit off into like a bit of a weird philosophical area. So you'll have to like
Bring it on.
entertain it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so some businesses, because so first of all, I think you have to analyze what kind of business you're in, because some businesses, the end product itself is software. And so I think you have to recognize that if you are the kind of business where your end product is software, first of all.
Right.
So what does that mean, right? Something like
Hmm.
what does the Starbucks app automate? Well, it automates paying for your drink, right? So that is a process that you used to have to go and well, I still do it anyway. I still, get my card out of my pocket and I pay, right? Or, you pay cash, but that app automates, you can use it to pay for your drinks. So that's something that it can do. It also kind of automates a little bit of marketing efforts. So this kind of gets into the idea of using software as a way to expand your reach.
Right. And
So
then you see them offering, get our app and you get a free coffee, or it allows you to also build in the rewards system too, and a referral
mhm,
system. Maybe, the software opens up a lot of different avenues that a traditional coffee shop would have never even dreamed of being able to do. I mean, it's incredible. And also, I mean, Starbucks offers, I think, over 100,000 different permeations of their product in terms of just coffee
right.
alone. You can get, dark roast with this in it and that and that in it. And after you take into account all of the different options, it's over 100,000 different things you can buy from Starbucks, a small little coffee shop around the corner. And they couldn't do that without the software, could they?
Yeah, I think getting having that kind of reach and getting their name out in front of people. So another sort of thing that's, like I said, this extra thing that's valuable about software is it puts you out into these public facing spaces. It is kind of like a forum now. So having a presence on the App Store, right, is a thing that's valuable to Starbucks, because it's like they kind of have to do that, right? It's kind of like it's like a marketing expense if you really think about it. They want to have a storefront on the App Store, even if it doesn't necessarily offer a ton of a huge amount of value to their
Right.
customers. Just saying,
Yeah.
like, this is another place where you can find us. And we can reach our customers is there certainly is something they're going to try and play with, right? So what is the automation there? Well, I guess it's kind of like we're automating or automating having to send marketing materials to people. You used to have to like,
Yes, like in the mail, a traditional mail
right.
campaign. Yeah, direct mail. You can just
Yeah.
automatically send a notification to their phone, and look what that does. It's free now. Once they have the app, you can market to them in perpetuity. And so that's an interesting marketing way to look at software. And so, like, let's say I'm running a I don't know. Let's say I'm running a social media marketing agency, right?
Yeah.
And I'm manually posting the photos, or and there's ways to automate these mundane tasks that allow you to really take your limit of 10 or 20 clients to an almost infinite number of clients, because before you were doing it manually, you're trying to run the ads and do the posts yourself. Now you can
Yeah.
leverage automation where you set it all up in advance, and you take what you were doing manually before for only 10 or 20 people busy doing it 8 hours a day. Now all of that is pushed aside because of the automation. You can set it up with bots or what have you, and now you've got all of this extra time that's freed up because you're
Yep.
you're automating the service end of it, and now you can focus only on client acquisition with a better service at the end of the day, because now you've got that the ability to say that it's going to come with less human error, because
Yes, that's another brilliant thing about software is if you've got a particularly error-prone process,
yeah,
oh man, make software out of that,
yeah,
because you can actually test whether or not your software is making errors, and you can really, really finely hone it so that you're always getting, exactly the result that you want. And there's so much efficiency that you can unlock if you're not making stupid human errors over and over and over again. Certainly.
no
Yeah.
kidding, right? So how do you know when you have something that's making human errors that's possible to be cloned into a software where those errors are a thing of the past? I mean, like, how do you know when? It goes back to the question: how do you know when automation and software is right for your business? It's and I want to really clarify this, because I think that's
Yeah.
really key when it comes down to understanding how we can inject automation and really incorporate software into our businesses. It's when something is mundane, it's bringing you pain, it's
Yep.
duplicatable. It's something that takes a lot of effort that could be automated, and it's something that has a lot of human error potential that could be
Yep.
streamlined with an automation software where you take care of all the possible mistakes up front, and then there's no more human error in perpetuity. What else do you look
Yeah.
for in terms of how do you know when to incorporate software into a business? Like, let's say it's an online business or a storefront, but typically what we're dealing with here are people that have online businesses. How do they know when it's right to have that automation, that software injected into their business?
Yeah. So I think we did touch on quite a
We
bit of
did.
it.
I
It's a
just want to
little
really
bit.
make sure that we've got everything down packed, that we can really know when it's right for our own businesses.
It's a little subjective on some level,
For
because I
sure.
think like the subjective hint of like I'm feeling pain from having to, because you can certainly go too much in the other direction, right? You can definitely go in the direction of like any little thing that seems like it's really seems like it's a little bit painful and a little bit repetitive. Oh, I'm going to go write software.
Yes.
That might not be a very good decision, because
No kidding.
if you do that, you may be taking something that is really not that big of a pain, or is perhaps not as repeatable as you might think it actually is. And so you have to start developing a scientific mindset of measuring what the impact of something is,
Hmm.
right? And then trying to quantify what the benefit of solving that problem would be, right? So if we look at something like, well, the clear and obvious one is like accounting, right? What's the obvious benefit if we no longer have to have people manually enter, no more mistakes or much fewer mistakes in accounting with ledgers that we're filling out, or with digital ledgers. You can imagine that's something that you can actually quantify. You can quantify the amount of time that people were spending on the previous process versus the amount of time that they're spending on the new process, and how much are you paying them per hour to do their job. There's probably some way to quantify the cost of a mistake. Now, the cost of a
Hmm.
mistake is something that's going to be very context specific. So, the cost of a mistake, if you're NASA, is like billions of dollars because the shuttle explodes, right? So that's like a high kind of risk environment. That's like an environment where it's like, yeah, this O-ring better be like perfect. And we better not like put that on incorrectly because the whole thing's going to blow up if we don't, right? Versus maybe a different kind of a situation where there are mistakes and there are certain mistakes that you can allow that if they do happen every so often, it's probably not that big of a deal. So it ultimately does come down to a kind of a risk analysis, right?
Right.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the kinds of things, usually the kinds of things that you're going to want to automate have they're very repeatable. They have this repeatable nature to them. Um, they're taking tons of time. Like they're taking people so much time away from from your employees, or the cost of having somebody do it is clear. If you multiply the time times the amount of money that you're paying for these people, right? So
Over,
if
yeah,
you
over an X amount of time. And that's probably a good way to weigh it out, right? If you
yeah,
say this problem is costing me over a year's time, $80,000 plus human
right,
error that goes into it. That's just an employee time and
yep,
maybe even dealing with some sort of software that could be taken in-house with your own programmer that you don't have to pay the fees yearly on that. And so you look at that
yep,
$80,000 cost and you say, well, this is costing me 80 grand a year. Maybe it's going to cost me 160 grand to build a software myself. But once it's built, I don't have to pay the monthly fee on the software we're already using, nor do I have to pay for all of my employee costs that are going into that right now. And those employees could be used for more leveraged things.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. We could lift those. Some of those employees are going to have greater ambitions. I'm almost
Yeah.
certain that like quite a few people have greater ambitions than being a secretary, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
it is truly a great thing that we liberated all of these people from being secretaries. Like
Yeah.
that sucked. There's so much better uses of a human mind than that. So if you do have especially talented individuals that you're working with, that you could put them towards something that where they can unlock their creativity or unlock other kinds of leverage. Yeah, I think that is certainly a clear win.
Right. Okay. So like, let's
Any
say,
yeah.
go ahead, my friend. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I was
You good
just
to
going to
go?
say it's going to be like it's something where there's a little bit of a subjective, yeah, I'm feeling the pain, but
Yep.
then what you want to do is you want to take that subjective pain and you want to give it due process and
Mm.
actually, scientifically uh, run some actually run some numbers on, exactly how much time it really is costing you and exactly what your risks are. If I do this thing versus if I don't. So
Right. Okay. So let's say we've looked at that objectively. We've got it into account how much it's costing us, what kind of human error is going into it, and we found something that should be automated, should have a program behind it. Um,
yeah,
Instead of learning how to program it ourselves, I always subscribe to Joe Polish and Dean Jackson talk about this a lot. They say who, not how, right? So they'll
right.
say instead of trying to learn how to do something and taking all the time and effort and trying to learn how to do it, you could just find one who, somebody who's already put in all that effort and leverage their how, right? So let's say we're looking for a who, we're looking for a programmer that we've identified something in our business that can be automated, can have software behind it. What are we
Yep.
looking for in a programmer to know that we're not going to get screwed over? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
it's
great
hard to
question.
hire somebody that we don't know if what they're doing, because then we can't really be like, well, there's a better way to do that, or it kind of opens us up to be able to be screwed over. So how do we prevent that?
Um, I'm going to preface this with saying I don't love most programmers,
Right.
just because like I think that many of them, it's hard to find the ones that are very practically minded, the ones that a lot of them are just in love with programming. And programming is fun. I think it's like, it's cool to like, write down some stuff on a computer and get it to do what you want to do. It's certainly an interesting intellectual endeavor, but ultimately at the end of the day, like we got to make something that works, right? And so you got to find the kinds of people that are good at making the kinds of things that you want, that you need. And programmers, there's a special kind of programmer that's almost like what I like to say they do is they write unremarkably simple code. And what that means is that they don't think that the code is special, and that they're not obsessed with the cleanliness of the code and the format of the code or any of those things. They're really just more, they view programming as problem solving. And they view a computer program as really just a collection of solved problems, and in a way that those, systems of solving those problems interacts with each other. So I think good programmers don't plan too much ahead. And I think that planning too much ahead in programming and in software has actually caused a lot of problems. I think that there's some amount of planning that we do have to do, but a lot of the actual process of writing software is more of a process of discovery. It's more of a, I'm going to go a little bit in this direction, and I'm going to see if we get more close to a solution to our problem. Okay. And if going in this direction gets us there, then we're going to kind of solidify that. And we're going to anchor ourselves there. And then we're going to see if we get, tomorrow, we're going to wake up and we're going to kind of go a little bit closer in this direction, closer to the solution to that problem. And if that gets us closer, then we'll anchor ourselves there. Versus, I'm just going to spend 10 days writing all these fancy object diagrams with things pointing to each other and mind maps and stuff. I find that basically never works, because usually what ends up happening is things in reality are never actually anything like what you theorize they're going to be. And so this process of thinking, oh, theoretically my program's going to work like that, usually doesn't pan out. So the kind of people I like to work with and the kind of people I like to hire, they're sort of scrappy. So they're sort of just all right, we got it. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve this problem. And they're not trying to be like mathematicians. They're not trying to find, the perfect function that if I write this function, then I've solved, the universe. I don't like those people.
Okay.
Because this sounds funny because I don't know how much exposure you have to programmers, but I have a lot of exposure to programmers. And there's just a lot of them that are like that. They're, and they keep inventing these paradigms. So you may have heard of something called object-oriented programming. You may have heard of something called functional programming. And they keep inventing these sort of isms. They're almost like religions.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is, don't hire a religious programmer. Hire not religious.
I know, I got you. Yeah. But we better be specific there.
Just to be sure.
Yes.
If I don't care what their actual faith is. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is
they're saying there's one way to do this, and this is it. Is that what you're saying? It's they're logs in terms of the way that they must do things. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So if somebody's I am really into the object-oriented way, and this is how we do things, I would shy away from that person. If somebody's oh, I'm really into the functional programming, this is how we do things, I would also shy away from that person. Okay. But if the person is more we're building something from the bottom up, and we're building a brick, and we're going to use that for the next thing, and we're going to build up this tool set of our own from the bottom up. And then when we're done, we're going to have this wonderful kind of suite of tools and automation that we have that we can use. That kind of a person is really what is who I'm more interested in hiring. And if you think about it, that kind of thinking, this sort of, I like to call it kind of bottom up versus top down. I tend to prefer to hire, I like people that do things kind of in a bottom up way. Top down, I usually find doesn't work too well, because most of the time your theory about how things work is not at all close to how things actually work. And it's why even give lip service to the theory if it's probably going to be wrong? I like people that think that they're probably going to be wrong. So I know that sounds weird,
Oh, I love it,
but
man. Yeah, what you're talking about is convergent versus divergent thinking, right? So if they have an idea ahead of time that this is how it's going to be, then all that they're doing when they're building the code is building something that only leads to that. Whereas if you're
yeah.
looking at it from a divergent way of thinking, you're starting off with an idea and you're branching out and finding the best way to have that program built. It's actually how Stephen King writes his books. He talks about
Oh,
this.
interesting.
Yeah, he talks about this in his book. It's called On Writing. He wrote it in the late 90s. It's a brilliant book for people that are trying to learn writing and copywriting or trying to position your business even. It's a great book for that. Fascinating. He talks about how when he writes a book, he has no idea how it's going to end, right? He just starts off and he builds from what he's writing and writing and writing. He almost looks at it as, this is an incredible way to look at it. He looks at it as discovering an artifact.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So this is the thing that like this is also, I don't want to like go too much on an aside of like how video game design works, but it's basically like that. It's basically this like I'm discovering something that's true, that's out there, that's some set of rules, something that's true out there in the universe.
Wow.
And my job as a game designer is just to present this little piece of truth to you. And then I'm gonna be the explorer. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look and I'm gonna find all the interesting bits of truth and I'm gonna put them in front of you. And you're gonna have this little like curated museum experience through my little exhibits of truth that I have distilled from what's out there. So it's kind of like that in programming too. It's kind of like look, you know, if you think about how we like what computers are, right? Basically what we did is we tricked some rocks into like getting electricity to flow through them and then to create like that's what we did. We actually did that. Like and then like we managed to build like logic modules off of like electricity flowing through rocks. Okay. And then we built smaller and like we built bigger and bigger modules out of those sub modules. And so computers were actually built from the bottom up. That's like the computer that you're using was built from the bottom up. You take a transistor and you build other kinds of chips from transistors, and then you build more and more complicated chips from that. You start building arithmetic logic units. You start building like memory controllers, and then you put them together and you get something called a CPU, right? That's, you know, central processing unit. You know, you get another one called a GPU, that's for doing graphics. And so that's actually how hardware is built. Hardware is built from the bottom up, and many of the much software works much better if you also build it from the bottom up too. So you know you have kind of your atoms of what goes into a program. So you have your numbers, right? And there's different ways that we can represent numbers. You've got integers, unsigned integers. You've also got, you know, strings of text. That's kind of another piece of data that you can work with. So you're taking these pieces of data and you're putting them together gradually into structures that make sense for how you're using them. And then as you kind of build up these bigger and bigger structures that sort of naturally, the best kind of software is software that, or the best kind of programming or code is like, it's code that sort of fits your problem domain like a glove. It's just that the language of the code that you're using is so suited to the problem that you're solving that it's just this like perfect natural fit. And you don't get that by forcing it from the top down. You get that by like solving one problem bottom up over and over and over again. And then you eventually arrive at this place where your tool is this perfect fit for what you're trying to do. So I look for people that think that way.
Fascinating. How do you find somebody that thinks that way? Like, how do you know they think that way? You know what I mean? Like, that's tricky to find somebody like that. How are you going to, tactically speaking, ask them questions that will make sure that they're, you know, qualified? Because like,
yeah, well,
how do you know, man? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think first of all, like having a little bit of experience, so having a little bit of experience with program, I'm at a unique advantage. So I don't know that I'm going to have the best advice for people who don't themselves program, right? So I think here's the problem also with the way that software developers are hired right now is like a lot of companies will just give them a code test. It's like, oh, here, solve these algorithms. And you should know that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, you should know it. But that doesn't mean that you're going to find somebody that is scrappy. It doesn't mean that you're going to find somebody that can really get at a good solution in a short period of time.
Yeah.
All it means is that you're going to evaluate whether or not they took the class.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what you want to avoid, right? So how do you find that
Yeah.
scrappy programmer? How do you know they're scrappy? How do you know that they're going to be looking at it from a divergent instead of a convergent point of view?
I mean, part of it is talking to them about their projects, right? So a lot. I would, if you talk to people about their projects, that's going to give you a lot of a sense. Let them talk about what the projects that they're working on, because one thing I noticed with programmers in particular is their projects tend to be a lot of like rat holing in a specific area. So they're like, oh, I really wanted to learn about shaders, and so I made this thing so I could learn about this shader, and and I made this thing so I could play around with this. But like a scrappy programmer won't necessarily think that way. What they'll be thinking is, I wanted to make this product, and in the process of trying to make this product, this thing, I ran into this problem, and then I solved that problem, and then I ran into this other problem, and then I solved that problem, and then I ran into this other. So the kind of person that you want to hire, I think, is somebody that what they look at programming not as I'm going to write the whole program. Instead, what they do is they look at it more like, I'm going to make this product, and what are the problems that I have to solve to make the product? And I'm going to, like, your day as a programmer is just a series of solving these problems. I solved this one. Okay, now we solve this one. Okay, I solved this one. I solved this one.
Right.
So like
discovering and solving the problems, not just solving them. It's discovering where
it's discovering the problems too. Yeah. So it might be something like, I built this 2D platformer game and I was playing around with it, and then I noticed that my game character like got stuck in the wall, and like I didn't want that to happen. So that was, I solved that problem. And then once I solved that problem, this other thing, like I noticed that his jump didn't feel natural. So because his jump didn't feel natural, then I went and I looked at, Isaac Newton's physics, and I found a way to incorporate his equations of motion into my game.
Wow.
And like, that's the kind of person you want to hire, right?
That's like cool, man. You're building a universe that replicates our existing reality here within the game, within the software. I mean, like,
yes.
It doesn't get much cooler than that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, I say that because like I literally did that. Like I literally I made a game where it's like, oh well, we need some physics equations.
Of course, right. So it feels natural to us because we're used to this reality. We're used to this version of physics. Whereas somebody else, like hypothetically in a different reality, would be making that character jump differently because that's how they jump in their reality.
Maybe there's no jumping. Like,
they're just sliding across the floor. No kidding. Okay, so walk me through, what would you instruct an entrepreneur to do from starting out? Pretty much what we've talked through today in 60 seconds. If I gave you a blank sheet of paper, what would you say, what would you write on it for them to do? Starting from figuring out when they need software and then how to find somebody to write that software for them.
Yeah, sounds great. So first of all, number one thing, what problem do you solve? Who do you solve it for? If you don't have answers to those questions, you don't have a business, period, end of story. If you can answer those questions, great. Like, that's awesome. Then the question becomes, based on the problem that you're solving and your customer, how much of your business is software really? So get a real understanding of how much of your business actually is software. Do you have products that are pure software? So are you a company that's like a game company where your product is software, right? Where the majority of your product is software, okay? Getting an understanding of that is going to give you more of a sense of how much software you actually have to make. But let's say if you're a Zappos, then most of your product actually isn't software. Your product is the shoes, and the software is automating it. So understanding where you fit in that landscape of different possible kinds of businesses, because every business really today is a software business, even if your product isn't software. So once you understand where you fit in that landscape, you can have a more sensible conversation about what to do with your software strategy. So I hope that's like a good 60-second answer.
It is. I like it. And then once you understand that you need software, then you look at somebody at hiring somebody instead of having to figure it out yourself.
Right.
Who can I hire? Who can I hire instead of how can I fix this problem? Somebody who's already got the experience that you don't have. So you don't have to learn it all. You just find somebody who's already got it. If you don't want to,
Yeah.
if you're not passionate about it, if you are, then that's a totally different conversation. But if you're focused
Yeah.
on
Like
business, right?
some people are weird. Like I am lucky that I enjoy making software. And I say, if you do enjoy, like, I kind of think that the killer combination actually is, this is something Naval Ravikant says. So big fan of his, but what he says is like the ultimate combination is when the builder and the seller are the same person. And so if you are that way, I would say like lean into it and don't hire somebody. Like if you really enjoy building the product yourself, you should just, and you're competent at it. You already feel like you're good at it. It's something that you love to do, then you should just go with that. Because I think ultimately that probably will be a more powerful combination, because instead of having to go through a lot of people, you have to like go through the software contracting agency or like go and talk to the developer or whatever. It's just talking to yourself, right? If I want to do something, I talk to myself and I sit down and do it. So if you're that kind of person, I would say go with it, but not everybody is.
Right. Not very many people, I think, in this category of people watching this are going to be going down that route. It's probably going to be more so they've identified something in their business that could be replicated, that could be automated, and they want to build some sort of software around that. And it comes down to finding somebody that would be capable and competent enough to make that happen for them. Right. And so what it really comes down to, they've got two choices. They can do it on their own, or they can do it with somebody else that's qualified and capable to get it done in a fraction of the time. Because now, instead of having to go through the time of learning it, the time of looking at what you've learned and actually putting it into action, and then perfecting that now that you put it into action. I mean, we're talking months and years down the road now, and you're totally off track of what you wanted to do with your business originally. Right. And so I think for a lot of people, it's going to be just finding somebody competent enough to either write the software for them or introduce them to somebody else that would be able to write the software for them and be able to do that scouting out, that introduction, and that making sure that they're scrappy, like you say, which I like how you put that, making sure that they're competent and they're not going to be somebody from one lens and one lens only, very, very ideological about it. Right.
Yeah. I like that word that you use, because that's actually the word that I use. I have a friend group of people that, we sort of like to think of ourselves as the non-ideological programmers. Right. And so that actually is how we describe it. It's like, we don't have an ideology of programming. The way that we view programming is problem solving. So find people that view it as problem solving. And if you just do that, you'll get much further.
Right. Somebody like you. And in fact, before we started this call, this is where this is leading to. You're willing to offer something to my audience watching as a sort of a free bonus for them getting this far, for being interested enough to find ways to automate their business. Tell me about it. What do you got for us?
Well, I like to, I obviously enjoy talking to entrepreneurs. And so I do occasionally take on sort of coaching, mentorship, like a consultation kind of a thing. It's around like $2,500. And what I like to do is just talk to you for, 15, 30 minutes, just chat with you about your business, kind of what it's going, see if we're a good fit for each other. I usually don't pick that many people, or I don't work with that many people, but if we are a really good fit, I think that I could certainly push you in the right direction in terms of figuring out how to integrate software into your business, finding somebody that's a really good fit for your needs, and executing on it, and seeing the fruits of software, because I certainly have myself. So
right. I love it. So what you're saying is that, hop on the phone with you for 15, 30 minutes for free, see if it's a good fit, right? See if, first of all, if software is even necessary, if they're at that stage.
Right.
And then if it is, then you'll be able to navigate them to the kind of pathway that would be best in terms of finding the solution for that software, whether you write the code for them or as part of that $2,500, it's not $1 million, it's $2,500, which not an insignificant sum, but also not an insignificant service as well, right? Because what
Yeah,
specifically
I'll
are they gonna,
say.
no kidding, right. So what are they going to be getting after that 30-minute consult if they find that it is a good fit? What do you think that you'd be able to do for an entrepreneur? What kind of benefits would they get from that?
Yeah, so much of it is going to be drawing on my experience, and it's going to be context specific. It's going to be specific to the kind of business that you're actually building.
Right.
There's a lot of what I would call like good ideas that I like to introduce people to, and to kind of get them on that same kind of wavelength, thinking that way. But also, each business is different, and so that's kind of why this is a consultation. It's saying. There might be special things or like specific knowledge in your area that you may need to account for when it comes to integrating software into your business. So it really is. It's really drawing on my experience working with previous clients and helping them to start pointing their product in the right direction, and also to use software in their product correctly, and to evaluate risks properly. The kinds of, first of all, you could put it in terms of money that you could possibly save by working with me. I mean, it's no joke to say that you could possibly save millions of dollars.
Right.
I think that's actually fairly accurate. And the reason I think that's accurate is I know of people who one of the first things they did is they went and they spent money on a patent for their software application. Now, patent lawyers are very expensive, as you may be aware. And the crazy thing about it is, like, they went and they did this when their business was at a point where they didn't even have a clear customer and they didn't have a clear product. And so it's like, clearly that's a waste, right? Like, maybe there is a point in the step where you do that, but I don't think that it's early on. So I just think that if they had the right guidance, they wouldn't have made that very expensive mistake. And it isn't just about the money that you spend; it's also about your time and your focus, right? So your ability to focus and your time that you have to be productive is very limited. And if you're pointing it in the right direction of discovering who your product is and who your customer is, and you're not thinking about this competitor over here and this possible thing over here, and you'll actually be able to focus on making something that people want, which then will bring crazy amounts of wealth. I mean, it clearly can. Like, it's a multiplier on your ability. So it's one of the primary thing I offer for people is the ability to focus.
Right. So you'll help them focus on what they need to focus on, and then how to focus there. And like you said, you've got a group of friends who are non-ideological thinkers and programmers. And so you can even make the introductions to your friends, to
Right.
people who, like, let's say they spell out their particular situation for you. And you're like, oh, well, my friend John would be perfect for that. I mean, that's exactly what he's done. In fact, he's already written a lot of code that he could take from his existing projects and copy and paste, transfer it over to your business. And instead of having to spend all that money and time and hiring somebody to build something that's already out there, he's already built it. And so you just making that one introduction for him. I mean, that's part of it. I'm wondering what else, $2,500, what else do they get for that? And how does it work specifically in terms of time wise?
Yeah. So time wise, beyond the initial consultation, I think that, we'll have a few regular check-ins over the coming months. And so what I certainly want to do is just schedule some calls where I say check in maybe like once a week or so for a few months.
And in those check-ins, what do you do for them, right? Like, what are they going to do in those check-ins? Yeah. So we're going to talk about where you are in the science experiment that is your business, right? So you're going to say, well, today we went and we evaluated this customer, or we tried to sell to these people, right? Or the next day we went and we were talking with this contracting agency about hiring a programmer or something, or we were thinking about
this set of features or whatever. And so a lot of that's just going to be just me kind of coming back and sort of talking to them and I don't, you could say it's kind of like error checking, but it's just saying like, look, this is a special kind of a way of thinking that is very uncommon. The scientific method is something that it took me years and years to understand. And so through this kind of coaching on how to measure and how to very clearly understand where your early stage business is, you'll then sort of have that in your mind afterwards, after a number of these sessions. And so, I say roughly an hour, but sometimes, these are just, it's kind of an ongoing process. And so sometimes like I need to sit down with somebody for like 3 hours and explain something. But if it takes that long, to get to a place where people really have it, then that's as long as it takes. So, the most important thing though, of course, is the outcome.
Yeah.
Is that, by the time that, what I want to get people to is a point where with their business idea, they're either at, this is something we should keep pursuing. And we know that we should keep pursuing it because we're in like a Zappos-like situation where we have customers coming in, we got money coming in, and we can start paying for automation. We can start actually automating that process. Or, if the service that I offer you is for you to definitely know that you should stop pursuing something, then I think that's a great service to offer as well, because that then frees you up to go and do something else that is going to be much more productive.
In terms of building software within their business, like you're talking about, like if they're at a point where they're not ready for software, or they don't have a necessary need for it yet, or you've realized in the consultation call that they're not at the point where they've got something proven with the buyers, that they have something that's worthy of having software built, you'll tell them that in the consultation for free, straight up, that these are your next steps to get to where you need to be. And then when you've got that ready, then you come for software.
Back.
Yeah,
come back to me and we'll chat about.
Right. So you give them the next steps to do. And once they do invest the 2,500, what's the end result that they're going to be getting? Let's say 3 years from now, looking back over the last 3 years, having worked with you. First of all, how long did the mentorship and the coaching and the consulting last for? And what are the results that they've been able to get 3 years down the line looking back?
Yeah, certainly. So, the initial cost, the initial time is probably going to be a few months to just kind of get this mindset into you in how to view software and how to understand how to evaluate software. So a lot of it is kind of demystifying software. So, well, my hope is that by working with me after a certain period of time, software is not this magical thing in your mind, right? That it's actually this like very concrete thing that maybe you don't actually program yourself, but you do understand sort of the role that it needs, that it fits in your business, and you can evaluate it properly, right? And so, and that means when you actually hire somebody, you're starting to think more along the lines of the sorts of qualities that you're looking for. So you'll have that actual ability, right? And you'll also have this ability to understand if I'm looking at, say, a set of features in software, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have about what is important to work on in a software product. And so by the time you're done with that initial mentorship kind of program, you'll have a better idea of what's really important in software. So one example I can give you with that is, it turns out that onboarding in any kind of software product is like probably more important than anything else that you could do.
Yeah. And
it's something that a lot of people actually get wrong. And so what ends up happening is people focus on like this like micro detail of a page inside of a page inside of a page, but they're losing like 90% of their customers on day one, right? So after that initial consultation, you'll actually be able to understand what to look at in terms of how much customers am I losing just on day one? Am I actually keeping people in my product? And are they finding this useful so that I can then direct them to the features that maybe I think are important. So you'll have this kind of like, you'll have more of a real like risk analysis about you. You'll have a better ability to understand what the real risks are in software, as opposed to the commonly perceived risks. So that is going to then inform you over the next 3 years. So, if you were to take that knowledge and then expand it 3 years out, right? So that's 3 years of not making a lot of very costly mistakes. And assuming that you then, originally had a business that you've actually got customers coming in, you've actually got people paying for it, you've actually got some cash flow here, and you're making wise decisions about how to build out your software infrastructure, and you're only focusing on the parts that are very important, and you're understanding what the real risks are. That's going to be magnified. And I can't give any specific numbers in terms of how much, but if you take, say, a business that is going to automate a process that was costing them $1 million, right? After 3 years, you just saved $3 million, right? Yeah. Or if you're talking about a product that could possibly have like viral growth, right? Like some kind of a startup like that. And if, say, in the initial stages, you really, really focus on retaining customers, and you're able to retain 10% more customers, okay? Well, magnify that over 3 years, right? How much more that difference, then that ability to keep customers is the difference between startups that go wildly successful and startups that completely fail. Right.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm also looking at the other end of the spectrum where it's like, not only will they gain all of this, but think about what they lose. They lose having to worry if they're going to get ripped off by a programmer. They lose the worry of having to worry if they even need software, if they're at the point in their business where they need that software yet. They don't have to worry anymore about having to wonder if there's a more efficient way or a better programmer. Like you said, that choosing the onboarding process of a programmer is the most important, crucial part. And otherwise, if they didn't do this, they would have to worry about whether or not that person that they've hired is really in it for their best interest, if they're trustworthy, and if they're competent and capable of really fulfilling that vision in a way, like you said, of being that scrappy programmer that's not looking at it as this is the way it's going to be, as an explorer, as somebody who's really looking for the best way to possibly sell that, to build that software and have something that really efficient makes everything more efficient in their business. I think where it is they don't have to worry about any of that anymore. And
it's a big mystery box. Like a lot of people are coming into it and they just don't, they don't have that experience. And so it does learning programming for me certainly felt like this, big, scary experience. And there was so much out there that's just noise. That's like, and so what I provide people is, it's like a noise filter. I'm gonna, get rid of the noise so that you really understand what is critical here and what's not. And you can focus on those things. And if you can consistently focus on those things for 3 years, you're going to see multiplicative benefits. Like, no kidding. Certainly.
Absolutely. I love it, man. And so literally what do they get? They get, first of all, book a call, a 15-minute, 30-minute consult to see if it's a good fit. And then after that, they make the investment, and it's a 3-month consulting package where they meet with you. How often is it? Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly for 3 months? Or is it just as much as it takes? You're willing to go as far as it takes to get that person in a much better position, that you've earned your keep, for example.
So I'm really like, I'm generally more focused on actual outcomes than I am on than I am on just how much time do we spend or any, that to me is like, it takes as long as it takes to get people to the place where they understand what the real risks are and they understand how to look at software. That's going to take as much time as it takes. Usually when working with people, what happens is stuff happens, like situations naturally arise where it makes sense to talk to somebody about it, right? And
Yeah,
so
right.
I do like to, have like regular check-ins with people, but I also like to just be available when there's
Mm.
something that that they need, a little bit of direction on. And so that's kind of part of that, at least in the in those first 3 months, right? It's just saying like, you are naturally going to run into situations where you're going to want somebody to talk to about this, and we can talk about it, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of where to go. But a lot of times, what I have discovered, especially in programming and in many of these pursuits, is like, I could be sitting there banging my head against a problem for days and days and days, and then in the next 15 minutes I find the thing that's my solution, and problem solved. If I spend another 15 minutes, it's not going to make the problem more solved or less solved, right?
I got you. Oh, that's fair. So you're looking at the end solution. If you're able to offer it to them on the consultation call, and if you are, then you move forward.
Yeah, exactly. If
I mean,
if both of us think it's a fit, yeah.
right. I like that. If it feels right for both of you. And I'm just thinking about how much, because I'm just thinking, how much time it would take to have to learn all of this themselves and have all that worry that you had to take on,
Pain and
moving forward.
frustration too, because believe me, I've failed a lot too. I know,
Of course. And that's,
I've talked about my successes, but I've also like made a lot of stuff that went nowhere. So
yeah,
that's how you start to get this mindset is
right.
by making a lot of mistakes.
You know what it reminds me of? It's the plumber that comes in and taps a pipe. And he says, okay, that'll be $500. And the guy says, $500? All you did was tap the pipe. And he said, okay, fine. It's $2 for tapping the pipe. And it's $498 for knowing where to tap. You know, you know what I mean?
Well, it's true though. That's exactly, I
Yes.
mean, that's the thing is, I've been building software professionally for 10 years now, and it is, there's just, I have this giant mountain of code that I've accumulated, and like solutions to problems that I have just accumulated over the years. And so it is kind of like that, some people just, I think it's kind of like an older school mentality of, charging by the hour makes sense if we're working in like the coal mine or something, like,
Right.
we go down there and like,
Very linear process. But what you're offering is
yeah,
exponential booming growth. Yes.
this is more like saying like, I'm going to use my experience to help put you in a better position for your business, to help you have a better understanding of what you can do with software. And so
Mm.
it's more about the fact that you're just in a better place than
Yeah.
you were before. So that's really what it is. And yeah, I mean, I think we're still kind of acclimating to the new rules of the knowledge economy, right? Because it very much does work differently. And so I think we'll actually start to see quite a bit of cultural change, just moving away from this very like factory industrial mindset to really what more of a 21st century work style looks like.
I love it. I love it. And so, book a call, see if it's a right fit. See, worst case, you're 30 minutes down the line past the call and you're in a position to know whether or not you're ready for software or what kind of
Yeah,
software could be used in your business right now. And it'll really expand your horizons from a programmer who understands how to really leverage automation in a way that you might not have even conceptualized being able to do in your business. So, worst case, you're better off than you were 30 minutes before the phone call. And you've got,
I guarantee you'll learn something.
yeah.
So
Worst
I'll
case,
probably learn something too. So that'll be
it's
fun.
mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend, it's been awesome. I really enjoyed interviewing you here today. It's been excellent.
Yeah, me too. This is
It's
a lot
been
of fun.
fun, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so everybody watching, book a call with the guy. He's a great guy. You can tell by watching. I mean, come on. And so he'll really help you out with your business. And I think no pressure moving forward. Worst case, you book the call and you see that it is a right fit or it's not a right fit. It's up to you and to book that call and explore together. And
Yeah,
so,
it's totally like, I'm a zero pressure kind of person. I really only care that you have the right outcome. That's honestly, that's all that matters.